Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of 6 Degrees of Associations. I'm your host, Lucas McCann. With us this morning, a special guest from across the pond, Ioannis Pallas, Managing Director of ASAE, European Society of Association Executives. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Lucas. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, as I often do, I'm going to turn the microphone over, Ioannis, to you. Tell us a little bit more about how you found associations, your current role, and where you are today.
Thank you. Well, like most people, I guess I stumbled upon associations. It came by accident. I was looking for an internship for 3 to 6 months so that my family was not going to be complaining that I don't have a real job. And then I could go back to what I used to do, which is art. But I fell in love with associations, and here I am 6 years afterwards, managing the secretariat of ASAE.
Yeah, the art stuff, I want to come back to that later. I'm always curious about, yes, the theme of sort of falling or stumbling into association execs is pretty common. How people got there and the gifts that they bring to our industry, I'm always fascinated by, and how they use those gifts. But let's come back to that. So this interview came about not as a natural referral in 6 Degrees of Association as we do, but a meeting at the ASAE annual meeting. Our producer Casey ran into you and said he thought you'd be a great somebody to come on the show, and here we are. I'd love to hear some initial thoughts about that ASAE annual meeting. Was that your first, and then how that may compare and contrast to some of the things that you do in Europe?
Indeed, it was my first, and I have to say I was overwhelmed. I was very happy to be invited to attend the meeting by our partners at the American Society of Association Executives. I had experiences from some members and former volunteer leaders that had been there before, and they were amazed by how well the whole thing is organized and how dynamic it is. And so I had some expectations that it was going to be big and loud, and in the end it was even bigger and louder than I expected. I was taken aback by the enthusiasm of everyone and how happy they were to see familiar faces, which is something that we see in associations also in Europe, but not as much as in the States. And of course, you have people coming from all over the continent and practically all over the world. So I loved the energy. I loved how diverse the whole thing was, many different topics covering every aspect of association management. And I was surprised by how everybody was chatting and hugging, kissing. Everybody was really happy to be there. When it comes to the content, I have to say that I was surprised by how less formal everything is, how direct the exchanges are among participants in the States as opposed to how we're used to in Europe. I was surprised by how political the whole thing is and how the two keynote speakers were talking about very topical issues. I understand that the American society is much more divided at this point than the European one, and to me, it was strange to see how ASAE was actually engaging with that and facing that up front. In Europe, we tend to be a bit more politically correct sometimes and careful about not to ruffle any feathers. So this was a great contrast, and I really enjoyed it, I have to say. Another thing that I found very interesting with the American Society's annual meeting is that they didn't cover some topics that in Europe we talk a lot about. For example, topics like sustainability. Every second event, every second meeting that we have in Europe is about sustainability, and there was no mention of that at all, almost, at the ASAE meeting, and it shows the different mindset, the different discourse that we have in both sides of the Atlantic, I guess.
Yeah, it's an interesting time politically over here, and with the election coming up, we'll age the episode a little bit here, but with the upcoming presidential election, that may be some of the impetus for sort of the injection of some of those very real, very relevant topics. So that makes sense. That maybe not always be the case if every annual year. And when you come back, I'd be interested to kind of re-engage with you and see, compare and contrast if there's any differences. We're going to Los Angeles next year, so come on back with us, and we can do a review. The essence of the community, I think, is very much what you said. For some of those folks, it's where we see each other. I've been going to that event for many years, and I see a lot of those folks once a year, right? We go back into our associations that may be state-founded, national-focused, or industry-specific, and that's an opportunity for us to get together. And yeah, there is a lot of hugging, embracing, laughing conversationally, reestablishing relationships, which I personally enjoy a lot as a part of that event. Is there anything, are there some of those key takeaways that you say, this would have been great if I could take some of this and inject it into how you all do it in Europe, specifically around those topics?
No, absolutely. I think that American associations in general, they are much more mature than the European ones. And you guys are talking about topics that sometimes are even considered to be a taboo in Europe, or if we are talking about them, we are in a much more infantile state. For example, business models and diversifying revenue streams, how associations need to become more business savvy and tech savvy in order to be able to confront all the challenges that we are facing at the moment is something that is not so much talked about in Europe. Associations are, until recently, they were not talking about making profits at all, about making substantial revenues. They were always trying to hit a balance and make sure that all the stakeholders and all the members are happy, but not too happy. Just giving them exactly what they needed. During COVID and after that, we realized that we need to do things differently than we used to. But we are talking a lot about innovation, and we're talking a lot about digitalization and how it affects associations. But we are not as courageous as the American associations when it comes to taking risks and innovating and experimenting with different ways of doing things. So definitely, I took a lot of ideas that hopefully we can adopt in Europe, and especially starting with my organization, the European Society of Association Executives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I won't say it hasn't always been like that. I think generally speaking, at a very high level, that's a more recent phenomenon in the past few decades that associations have really start to think about diversifying revenues and innovations. One, to compete with general technology and innovation. Two, to keep up with younger generations who have always had that as a part of their life. And if we roll the clock back into the 80s, even 90s, the majority of revenue was still dues based, right? Which creates its own risk. And the idea of diversifying through education, through partnerships, through advocacy, publications, and so forth has become very much a forefront of, from a business standpoint, a strategy for those associations.
Yeah, I believe there is a sea of opportunities out there. The question is, are the associations, the secretariats, in a position to convince their stakeholders that they should go after them, and then try to get them in a discussion about where should we go first, what aligns with our mission and vision. So I believe that it's even more responsibility for the Secretary Generals, directors of associations, to convince their stakeholders and members that they need to start thinking things differently and planning, managing, drafting a roadmap for the board to align and approve and go forward.
Yeah. What about flipping the script a little bit? Are there things that you all do in EASE or your constituent members within ESAE, I should say, do really well that maybe we could learn from that you didn't see as much or as prevalent here in your experience?
Well, I would like to think that when it comes to protection of the environment and making sure that our organizations are more sustainable is going to be something that the American associations might be influenced from, because we're talking about sustainability, not only the environmental aspect, but also the social and governance parts of it a lot. And I think that we might have a thing or two that other associations, other parts of the world might be influenced from. Other than that, we are talking a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion in a way that is also different than the way that has been discussed in the States. In the States, you're focusing a lot on diversity. I think that we are talking a little bit more about inclusion ourselves and how that connects with the governance and the mission and the vision of the association. So perhaps it could be something to look into and see how we can do things differently.
Can we stop and pull on that thread a little bit? I'd be curious to see, because some people could take a broader stroke to that, and it sounds like you're seeing some more nuance. I'd love to hear more about that.
Sure. The way I understand it in the US, you're talking a lot about, of course, the gender balance and wage parity. And of course, the racial issues is quite important. In Europe, we are looking at it from the perspective of having different nationalities, different languages, different cultures in the same continent. And especially in Brussels, where most of the international and European associations are based, we have a very multicultural environment. We don't have the same culture or historical burdens or traditions that you guys have in the States, but we are facing an EU that is ever expanding, that brings different cultures and different languages in the same place, and all of the actors, they try to work together. We had some more dominant countries or some more dominant cultures that were part of the discourse. Now accepting new ones and making sure that everybody has access to the decision making and to the knowledge is quite a challenge sometimes. And of course, we are expanding that to inclusion of in our events, making sure that our teams, staff teams, are feeling that are working in a well-balanced environment. Work-life balance is becoming more important after COVID. We had a lot of burnouts in our sector in the last couple of years. So trying to make sure that different sexual minorities, different people from different cultural and political backgrounds all feel comfortable in working together, it is something that we're pursuing.
Yeah, we talked a little bit before the show, and it can be perceived as a burden or a challenge. But what I heard you say was that's also a lot of what attracts you to association, is that diversity of ideas that's interesting to you. Have we sort of tapped into the creative side of you in that maybe sees an opportunity, and then the beauty in that?
Absolutely. I think that creativity is what drives me in continuing working for associations and wanting to learn more. I think this diversity helps with bringing different ideas to the table, and the challenge for every association is to compose different ideas and create a common thread, a common roadmap for everybody to follow. Trying to compose ideas, consulting with your members and stakeholders, and trying to come up with solutions to problems that come up. I think it's something that is never ending. It's not like at associations we have found a template, and that template can be applied to every different industry, every different country, or different cultures and mindsets. It's something that we have to reinvent all the time, and that is, to me, very exciting.
Yeah. Well said. I think you nailed it. How do you think, again, I'm always curious, going back to the creativity side, again, your background sort of spans a couple of different areas that I think you utilize well. Tell me a little bit more about how the creativity, you feel like your background in that has helped you in your current role.
So for the audience, to get to know me better, my studies were in international political economy and then in international relations and European politics. But on the side, I was working a lot with arts. I studied cinema, and for the most part of my adult life, I practiced art photography. For people who want to see my work, they can Google my name and they will probably bump into my website. So I did things. We'll
include a link in the post so that everybody can get to it. Yeah.
Awesome. But of course, art photography or art in general doesn't pay the bills. So from time to time, I used to do some jobs here and there. And associations are actually very easy to get into and to get out of. That's how I stumbled upon ASAE. When it comes to photography in particular, it makes you try to find solutions to problems every day, constantly. And from the thousands of pictures that you take in a span of a week or a month, only one, at the best case scenario, can be successful. So getting acquainted with failure, getting used to failure, is something that teaches you a lot. You know that you have to work a lot and to give it a lot of try in order for the success to come. And I think that with my work now, it's the same. You have to risk. You have to take a leap of faith sometimes, and you can experiment and try new things for some of that to work out in the end.
I think it's just a wonderful illustration about how the association community itself is made up of a very diverse background of individuals that sort of coming from all angles all fell into this and are in an industry that supports business, supports industry from a lot of different perspectives, and makes it a very valuable asset to this community. So.
Absolutely. We have scientists, IT guys, engineers, people who studied languages, philology, some of them even theology. I met a guy the other day. So I think that the people who work in associations, none of us dreamt of working in associations as a child. We discovered associations at some point in our lives, and we all come from different backgrounds, and especially in Europe, as I said before, different cultural and historical backgrounds as well. So that makes it even more exciting to work in such an environment.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other things you shared with me is sort of a thirst or a love for knowledge and learning. Talk to me a little bit about that, how that breeds into maybe your work life, personal life, into associations.
Well, that fascinates me about working with ASAE, is that everybody that I work with knows something more than I do. From governance, strategy, communications, event management, all of my members and volunteer leaders, they have bigger knowledge than I have. And the more I learn, the more I discover that there's much more to learn in the process. So I'm in a very privileged position that I get to learn from all these people that are willing to share. They are very open and to give their experiences and to learn themselves from their colleagues. So my position is a position of privilege because I get to listen to their stories and adopt what can be adapted in my association.
Yeah, learning has become a very big part in the Americas Association community, not only from as an avenue to help as the association to help its members learn and create certifications and create learning platforms, but also just to educate the greater community on what's going on. Is how much of that is happening in the Europe association market?
I think we have an imbalance there. I think that health associations, they are much more advanced than others. Of course, professional societies in general more than trade associations, but especially health-related associations are doing some very interesting work there. And I think that everybody can learn from that and adapt it to their own associations because the possibilities are endless. Using the knowledge as part of their offering, and they're able to package it correctly and offer it to their members and outside stakeholders. And I think that everybody has a lot to learn from that. I think it opens a lot of possibilities for associations to diversify their revenues, make the impact towards their members and stakeholders more immediate, embrace new technologies, and also normalize it as part of their offering. So I think that more and more associations will start looking into that, and I think that the more they tap upon knowledge sharing through online platforms, the more they will be able to go towards certification and accreditation, and of course diversify the revenues for their organizations.
Yeah, I just see that as a tremendous opportunity that I don't see any slowing down of. Is there's become almost less of an emphasis on higher education in the U.S. and more emphasis on trade certifications, online learning, sort of getting these awards, again, certifications in very specialized areas. And I see the opportunity for associations to just continue to capitalize on that as if you want to be an expert in a specific category within this industry, them being the hub for knowledge, them being the hub for certifications and being the gold standard, as it were, for their industry, rather than looking for that specialization in higher education where it's not as prevalent.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. But I would also add the part of micro learning. There are many people who do not want to go full throttle within an association or within a profession, and they just want to pick and choose what they like from different associations and different professions. For these people, spending a few hours to a few weeks into getting some certifications might be enough, and they might not want to fully engage as full members in an association to get the full package. So I think that if associations are able to differentiate that offering, it might be to their advantage at the end of the day. And especially now with technology, with AI, we can tailor the offering, and we can tailor what is available. People can come and go and take whatever they want that makes sense for them, and not for the person who designs the whole educational platform.
I think that's an excellent point. The breadth of certifications and knowledge offerings should be a little bit more diverse in terms of its commitment to the members and also how extensive somebody would want to dive in deep to a specific industry, right? So the idea that you could come in and learn a few things from this industry, or having an offering that would encapsulate a longer learning. So those that really do want to jump in with both feet and make it a career, they would have that optionality to do that as well. But it does seem more common within our culture today to sort of jump around and do things in shorter spurts, and hey, you get a little bit of my attention here and a little bit of my attention there, rather than, you know, a longer term focused effort.
Especially younger generations, I think they're more like that. But of course, we have a lot to see about what the future will bring. But we see that association members, they're starting to behave more than clients, than traditional association members that they used to be in one category for the full span of their lives.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think attracting that younger generation to association has been a hot topic for a few years now. A lot of associations, you know, come to our firm, for example, looking for consulting or ideas on how do I attract these younger members? What are they looking for out of an association? It's not necessarily the in-person networking. It might not be, you know, the publications. You know, is that a conversation that you all have in Europe often about, and maybe do you have any solutions that you've seen work well?
Indeed, we talked a lot about how to attract younger people in an association and engage with them. Also, during the American Society of Association Executives annual meeting, I was happy to be invited by our partners at MCI at a panel discussion during the ASAE annual. And there we discussed a lot about how associations, not only they can tap into the younger generation as an option, but how it is imperative for them to do so. Otherwise, they will not be able to ensure the sustainability of the profession and the sustainability of the organization to begin with. We need to start understanding how to speak to younger generations and not only engage them to consume content from our organizations, but also to invite them to start producing content themselves, but also be part of the decision making. Younger generations, they need to be included in everything that we do, in order for them to stay faithful and contribute as much as possible. Otherwise, they will just go to another opportunity.
Yeah, I do see an opportunity there. Inviting them in to be part of the content creation, right? That's one of their gifts. Having grown up in an environment where it's social media driven, it's self-produced content. Having them be part of that, whereas that's new for an older generation to think that, oh, I'm going to be the one producing the content. You know, that's somebody else's role specifically to do that. But everybody can contribute. And I would argue they're better at it than maybe our generation, older generations are.
Oftentimes, yes. I see many associations when electing their new volunteer leadership. Sometimes they have to invest in programs to teach them how to communicate, how to create content, how to engage with other members. I think that younger generations, they have that ingrained in their behavior. So it's less investment on behalf of the association, but in the same time, the association needs to create the structures that are open enough for young people to get in.
Yeah, I've coached my kids, and they're now getting into this part of their life where they're looking to play college sports. And I've learned a big part of it is their online presence. And a smaller puzzle piece into being recruited, if you will, is they look at your social media, and part of their decision, not the greatest decision, but part of the decision is how much attention could that player, based on their audience, bring to our school. So if they play well, that's great. But if they have 50,000 or 100,000 followers already, that could really benefit the institution as to sort of the social presence that they bring as part of the recruiting package. I'm not saying that that's the biggest part, but it's an interesting thing to think about from a member perspective is, as you're bringing on and recruiting new members, how much are we thinking about, well, how much presence are they going to bring to the association in terms of eyeballs attention, which is, the new asset, the new currency?
That's a bit terrifying, to be honest. I didn't know that it happened in the sports world, but it makes sense. My sister actually is an artist herself, and she's into music, and in her world also that plays a huge role. And also in associations also, I think that some of our volunteer leaders, some of our members, they are influencers, let's say, in their own environment. So I guess it makes sense for an association to try to engage them further, because they will be the association's promoters, the association's ambassadors, and they will contribute into the discourse.
Yeah, well, sports is a business just like anything else, so it shouldn't shock us too much that that money, that attention is all part of it.
Absolutely.
Switching gears, how much M&A is happening in the European market for associations? It's very prevalent over here. It's a big part of the conversation for a lot of association CEOs, because they understand, based on how their dues are structured, that could have potentially a very negative impact on their membership fees, right? You imagine two larger associations, if your dues aren't structured. Also, there's a lot of succession planning happening over the next 10 to 15 years. It's already started. How much of that conversation, how much of that activity is happening in Europe?
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you because your question was so nicely put, but I don't know what an M&A is.
M&A, mergers and acquisitions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
At the association level, or within associations at the member level.
I would say that in Europe it doesn't happen at all. It's shocking. I recently heard of an association that is actually shutting down. Their members decided for the association to dissolve, and it's very rare. I would say that less than 1% of associations are being merged. Even associations that have structural issues, even associations that started in a specific industry and the industry has changed a lot, they're having a big trouble splitting the association in two or merging with another association. It is very much a taboo. I think that we are starting to think of it more in business terms nowadays, but for many years it was out of the question. So definitely we have a lot to learn from an M&A happening in the States, or have happened in the States in the past.
That's really interesting. Well, how about, Ioannis, how about a couple of fun questions? One I like to throw out is, we're winding up here at the end of the year. Usually in the fourth quarter is when I start building my calendar for the next year. What's something that is the first thing to hit your calendar, aside from ASAE 2025 in Los Angeles? But, what's something fun that hits your calendar every year and is a priority for you?
Oh, our New Year's reception, for sure. It's on the 15th of January. It's always in mid-January. It's the opportunity for us to get together with our members in a more cozy environment and just catch up after holidays and start planning the year ahead. So for me, I always enjoy meeting my members in real life. That is the opportunity for everybody to come from all over Europe to join colleagues. So if you happen to be in Brussels or around Brussels that time, please mark your calendars.
Yeah, will do. I might make the flight just for it. That sounds like a good party. I'm always up for that.
We stay up late.
I'm okay with that. I don't know how the time change will affect me, but actually I'll probably be in a good state, because it will seem like morning to me, right? I'll be fine with staying up late. I just won't be able to wake up early the next day. Well, another kind of fun one, I'd like to ask is, what's something about yourself that we couldn't find on the internet or on your resume?
I don't know. That's a tough one. I think you have everything on me. Coming from Greece myself, perhaps that could be of interest. I've been living in Brussels for the last 15 years now. I've made it my home. It's such a multicultural environment that I enjoyed here. Although I have to admit that I hate the fact that 300 days out of the 365 a year is cloudy, and I try to go to the south of Europe as much as possible to get a restart.
Well, there you go. I had two employees recently who did vacation in Greece and came back just saying how beautiful it was. One of them even joined one of our meetings, from Greece, just to show us how beautiful it was while we're all, on a meeting. I rubbed it in our face, but I've now put that on my list of places to visit. Looks beautiful.
If you need any tips, I'm here for you.
Excellent. Well, we'll come find you. Well, I do have the unfortunate pleasure of wrapping us up, but before we go, Ioannis, I'd love to hear if you have somebody in your association network that you think our audience would benefit from hearing from.
I'd like to think that many of our volunteer leaders are quite interesting. They had extremely interesting careers, but especially my president, Mohammed Mesghani, you should definitely check him out. He has been in the same association for the most part of his career, more than 30 years now. He loves what he does when it comes to international public transport, so you should definitely check him out and invite him at the future interview.
Excellent. Will do. Well, Ioannis, thank you so much for the time. I look forward to maybe connecting with you. If we don't make January happen at the holiday party, certainly ASAE 25. And thank you again for the time.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.